The grave. It's our final resting place. Or is it? Join host Ashley Marino and Benjamin Young of Cross Country Paranormal as they take you on a journey beyond the imaginable, beyond the limits, beyond the afterlife. Both Ashley and Benjamin are experienced researchers seeking truth of life after death. Cross Country Paranormal is an established team of researchers with one goal in mind: finding proof that life exists beyond. Now, your host of Beyond the Afterlife, Ashley and Benjamin.
Ben, where'd you go? You're just gonna leave me hanging? Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Afterlife. I almost said Realm of Darkness. Wrong show, wrong day. I don't know what happened to Ben. He was supposed to be here. I'm assuming he probably got kicked off, maybe. Internet's not working. Something weird. But tonight we are looking at trying to cover kind of like the history and the beginning of paranormal and a little bit of folklore and all of those lovely stories that we love to hear. You know, everything from vampires and werewolves down to Bloody Mary, you know, we all did as a kid. So a lot of questions I get as a paranormal investigator is kind of like, what is a ghost? What is the description of a ghost, and how does it even kind of play in today? And, you know, a lot of people know them as a specter. So it's a spirit, ghost, specter, any of those kinds of names. But it's actually based on an ancient idea that the theory is.
I have no idea what happened. The intro came, then I saw nothing, and then it shut off. So I'm here.
Maybe that was just the universe's way of saying that, hey, I got this.
Yeah, and let you talk the whole time.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, anyway, what I was saying is that, you know, and I'm sure you probably get this, but as an investigator, a lot of the things that I get is like, what is a ghost? Like, what's considered a ghost? Where did that, you know, where did that from? The whole history behind it is that it's actually an ancient idea that a person's spirit exists outside of its body and after the person has already died. And it's supposed to continue life, but like on a different plane. And the ancient beliefs of that actually is what kind of stems.
So with the ancient beliefs in spirits, like, I know I missed the first minute of you talking. How far back did you find any documentation of a spirit, a ghost, whatever people want to refer to it as?
Well, okay, so really interesting fact is 3,500 years ago, there is a Babylonian tablet that is the first discovered, I guess, etching of any type of paranormal activity. And on this little tablet, it'll fit like in the size of your hand. And if you put it under a light, it shows the depiction and instructions on how to perform a modern day exorcism. And, you know, and that was 3,500 years ago, before we had the influence of religion and TV and media and all of that. So I think throughout history, every country, every religion, they all have their own kind of story of paranormal and ghosts and spirits. And you know, and that's the whole thing with folklore is it's just... You're just gonna keep leaving me tonight.
Hey, I got it fixed. There we go. We're good.
Okay, good.
Back on the computer.
Anyway, I think a lot of cultures have different depictions of paranormal, and clearly it ranges all the way back to 3,500 years ago with this Babylonian tablet. But if you do if you do any type of research or anything, you know, in England, there's reports, and, you know, the earliest in the US, I think, is, you know, people saying that Benjamin Franklin was haunting the statue in Philadelphia. You know, people have seen Lincoln outside the White House. So
Yeah,
These
he's a
hauntings,
big concrete statue. I mean, are they referring to the statue or him somewhere else?
they're saying that they've seen him, well, clearly in the theater, but they've seen him in the White House, and they've seen him in different, the Springfield Capitol building, they're claiming. So I don't know.
So with the spirits of, Benjamin Franklin and speaking of Benjamin Franklin, that I've read that he was a fan of the paranormal, like in his own. I mean, he had some weird hobbies, if anyone has time to research him, but one of them was paranormal, and he claimed to see spirits as well too. Do I have any documentation written on stone like you found? No, I do not. But the fact that it goes back that far, and that's our founding fathers, I don't see anything in the Constitution about thou shalt not, or I'm sorry, that's the commandments.
That's the Constitution.
With the founding fathers, obviously, the way things were looked at back then, based on religious views, based on backgrounds, like talking to somebody or spotting somebody who's not there was shunned upon. So with what you're saying, though, the more people evolved and the more open minds would get out there, things would happen. So sightings of Lincoln were stated pretty much immediately after his death. That those
1865 is when he was shot. So ever since then, and what people don't realize is even in today's cultures and even today's world, something as simple as a funeral. So in ancient times, a funeral was actually a ritual to try to keep the spirit with the body, so that the spirit of that person wouldn't haunt either the location or any individuals in the family. And funerals, everybody does those now. And I don't think people realize that when they're taking part in a funeral, they're planning a funeral, it was actually an ancient ritual because of paranormal, and those funerals are held by people that don't believe in any of that.
But keeping family members with, I'm ignoring all of the doll comments, by the way, that have already been shared in this group because people are pointing out that things sitting behind you. But keeping,
I know, I saw Ian. I was going to break out Maria.
She can come say hi later. But with funerals and keeping, the spirits buried, so to say, what exactly would you classify a spirit? Because, based on beliefs, based on what people view, I've heard the concept of there's no such thing as spirits, they're energies, or they're angels, or they're demons, or all that stuff. So where did the concept of the word spirit or a ghost come from?
I think that, that's a great question. I think spirits maybe is just a description of what they think. Because, this goes all the way back before Bible and all that stuff. And you really don't learn about angels and demons until, the Bible and Jesus and all of that. I think maybe it's just an ancient term, just like folklore. People just assume that word has, I guess, always been around, and it hasn't. It was created by an Englishman to basically say, here we're going to call it folklore, but it's these fictional tales, and it's trying to bring a culture together and trying to kind of like bring these legends and these myths together to share as these stories. But, these stories over time have evolved, and kind of jumping off track, but, we're both supernatural lovers,
Right.
And one of the things that I always wonder is it a situation where it's a game of telephone, where I tell you, oh my gosh, I stood in front of the mirror and I saw this lady and she had blood everywhere. And then you say, oh, I saw this, my friend saw this lady and she was bloody and her name was Mary. And do these tend to be a game of telephone that kind of just spread like wildfire. And then next thing you know, you have this haunting.
So to navigate this roadmap of folklore and spirit and stuff that can go every which way, I would look at it as a lot of these might start as stories, but stories also start as something. So let's add to your, getting sidetracked with this type of stuff. There is a theory that anytime somebody has a nightmare or a dream, and there's people they don't recognize in their dream, technically your mind has seen that face somewhere before. So speaking of Bloody Mary, and this is actually a scientific fact, nothing paranormal related, but a scientific fact of your mind cannot make up a face. The human mind does not work like that. So when you dream about a Bloody Mary or something, not the drink, something like that you have seen it somewhere. So the story of Bloody Mary, let's stick to that because what you brought up, it may have started as, no description, a fictional tale. And then you have one person one day that meets someone and they're like, oh, they're kind of scary looking. Then they have a dream about that person being covered in blood. What was her name? Her name's Mary. So to your point of playing the game of telephone, the folklore of that may have been developed over time, but everything from Bloody Mary to Nessie to Bigfoot to Yetis all started somewhere. And that's what I'm most interested in. And I would say people that are watching this are interested in is, where does all this come from? What is the root of all of this?
Well, and that's why I just cannot get that Babylonian tablet out of my head. I mean, 3,500 years ago, we didn't have the influence of TV and movies and media. We didn't have that or they didn't have that influence. And to have this person etch something and the instructions on how to perform what we would consider a modern day exorcism, it just baffles my mind because it's like, well, would it have been a mental illness back then? Would it have been the influence of maybe earthly herb that they didn't understand would play mind tricks? Is it
mushrooms?
Mushrooms, weed, whatever. Is it truly a possession or a haunting? And, there's so many different things. And they say that if you have a mental illness or you're stressed or you're struggling, that you're more likely to have a haunting. But, I don't know. It blows my mind because that far back, it's easy to watch a scary movie and have nightmares. It's easy to watch, go on an investigation like we do and go home and feel like you're being watched. The mind is a very powerful tool. And we put ourselves as investigators into these situations that open these doors, and our mind can play tricks. You're sitting in the dark and you think you see shadows, or you feel like you're being watched. But, going into these locations, people have these preconceived notions. They didn't have that 3,500 years ago.
But with the mental illness, that predates all of this stuff. Back then they may not have known what it was. It could have been considered an exorcism. It could have been considered, a earthly substance, whatever you wanted to call it. But to your point with documented something like an exorcism, like look at Native Americans, that they used, rituals to help cure people. And that's not just mental illness, it's a sickness as well. That but the fact that it translates to a modern day exorcism is what's stumping me. It's kind of like the Nostradamus stuff, where the stuff he predicted, like back then, you're like, man, this guy's crazy. He got into a bad batch or something. But you look at the stuff today, and is it our minds trying to make sense of it? And we connect it to what the media has influenced or what our knowledge in this world has influenced? Or is there actually some truth behind it of, hey, this really is a thing? Like exorcisms to this day are still questioned of, is this a mental illness or is this truly a demonic entity affecting this person?
Okay. And now, of course, because I love to do this on the other show, let's play devil's advocate now. No pun intended. But, like you said, with media and all of that, but back then, they didn't have the influence, and they didn't have, in today's world, if a little kid comes up and says, oh, there's a monster under my bed, they say, oh, there's nothing there. Oh, there's nothing there. Stop faking. But back then, were they just more open-minded and more accepting of the natural planes? And that's why back then they were having these experiences. Versus now we're taught, well, not in our field, but we're taught that this stuff doesn't exist, that there's nothing that bumps in the night, ghosts don't exist. But back then, maybe they were more open-minded and more spiritual and more into all of that stuff that we're getting to. But
So with the exception of kids, because, you know, the theory is kids, pets, and everything are more open-minded to the spirit realm than technically people like us would be. And back then, yeah, they didn't have the media to influence, but there are other things. I'm not saying it's not a thing, because obviously I wouldn't be in this field if I thought it all was bogus, but it's just really hard to look at it and be like, hey, what is this? And that's even coming into considering the Bible, come into considering, like I brought up a few minutes ago, Nostradamus, that you have to look at it as, what did they mean back then? Because something that was meant back then doesn't mean the same thing now. For example, like the Nostradamus talking about, you know, the world ending and stuff like that. Like back then, people thought the world was flat. So, I mean, you got to look at it. I mean, you're right. There's still people that think they can walk, you know, to somewhere like Ohio and jump off and be done. But it's all a matter of how things are perceived. And granted, I do believe that back then there was more things in the world than there are today, because the world's so crowded. And I don't vision just in general, there's so much going on in everyday life now, we don't pay attention. I mean, look at the movie The Sixth Sense, which I'm sure we've all seen. The kid that sees the ghost out of the corner of his eyes, everything. For all you and I know, we could see a spirit every day walking, standing at the corner, and we don't think anything of it because we're so focused on, oh, we have to get to work, we have to do this, that we don't document it. The only times we document it is, like you said, when we're on our investigations. But then we're actively looking for it. But then what are we doing when we're actively looking for it? We're trying to tell ourselves in our head, that wasn't paranormal, that was blank. Right. So right now we play devil's advocate with ourselves. And I think back then that wasn't a thing. What they saw is what they saw and what they documented.
Well, and even, you know, even when we're not on investigations, do you ever get home and you like see something out of the corner of your eye and you're like, no, you know, it's almost like when we're not in those situations, we're more likely to write stuff off. And you're right. Like, you know, there's times where I'll hear something and I'm like, oh, it's the wind blowing, or, oh, it's, you know, the neighbor outside with the trash can or something. And I think we just have so many distractions in the world that it's easy for us to say, oh, it was a dog barking or the wind blowing or something, instead of what we might actually hear.
Do we want to admit if something is in our home, or do we kind of just make the excuse to make ourselves feel better?
Okay, well, that's a tricky question. Are you asking me personally or as a normal individual?
As a normal human being.
Then yes, I think people are very intrigued by the afterlife. I think they are very, I think they question it, but they don't want any part of it. And hopefully he's not listening. My uncle is a perfect example. He loves any type of paranormal show. He loves to watch it. And you know, he'll be like, oh, if I was there, I would do this and I wouldn't do that. Well, I took him to Hinsdale and it was a whole completely different story. I mean, he did great, but you know, when you're in that situation, you're like, oh, no. Like, I like to watch it on TV. I don't want it in real life. And I think people talk themselves out of it. Now, me, I would probably be running around with equipment and trying to figure out what it is, but
I mean, that's what we do though.
Yeah.
So in our recent investigation, I met a couple that, you know, didn't really believe in the paranormal type stuff, but they claimed all this stuff happens at their house, but they did what you said. Oh, this is this. So I spent about 15 minutes kind of just picking away. Well, how could it be this if this happened? And by the end of it, they just had a excuse me, oh crap look on their face of, maybe it's a little something more that we don't want to admit. So that's what brought up do we ignore it because we don't want it there? Even personally. So I bought a haunted vodka, well, supposedly haunted vodka that was brewed with Annabelle. You know how I feel about dolls, but I'm like, oh, that's a cool thing to have. And within a day or two of having it, there's now a handprint on my wall. To me, nah, nothing. That is nothing because I don't want anything here. I'm good. I deal with it enough outside of here.
Now, here's the funny thing. I'm going to ask questions that I already know answers to because Ashley and I have chatted. But the viewers don't know. So this handprint on your wall, what size is it? Because we know that we have you and Ashley and Colson, right?
Smaller than my hand.
2 adults and a small child. Does it fit that range? And don't make me text Ashley because I will ask her.
Yes.
Okay, so you think it would fit Ashley's hands?
No.
The babies.
A little bit bigger.
See, so then how do you?
No, but like if you
have you
put your
had
hand,
any children at your house that would have
not
left
that could reach that high.
See,
but to me, I justify in my head, it's nothing. There might be a protection sitting on the box now, but I'm just going to keep saying out loud that, it's no big deal. It's nothing.
So there's nothing there, but you're taking precautions just in case there is.
Yeah, just in case.
Okay, well, that's fair. I will give that to you. That's fair. That's fair.
So with the belief in, we kind of got sidetracked from the spirits because I kind of want to touch on spirits and folklore. That what is your concept? And I don't mean your as in, everyday person, but you personally, is a spirit actually a spirit of a person, or is it a energy left behind from someone who passed, or the same thing? What would you define your version?
My version, I guess it would depend on the haunting. So in my world, I do believe in residual hauntings, which is just an impression on that location. I feel that it has to be something very tragic or very emotionally intense to imprint on a location or a piece of land. So like war or, a massacre of some sort, that I believe would be residual. But I do believe there's intelligent hauntings. And I say that because I myself have experienced intelligent hauntings. So I think if it's spiritual, I think it's just an imprint of energy that is replaying over and over, like a little moment stuck in time. And you're just witnessing that moment, like a movie just playing over and over. If it's an intelligent haunting, I do feel that it has to be a portion of yourself, but maybe not all of yourself, if that makes sense.
It does. So before I ask for a little more detail, because I know you, so now we're going to play the game back to you. That first off, everyone who's commenting on the stuff, we could see the comments. So if you have questions or anything to add, please throw it out there, and we'll throw it into the conversation. Residual or intelligent, Hinsdale. We've been there together. What would you say? What would you say about Hinsdale?
So Hinsdale is my kryptonite. It is my favorite location, but it screws with me more than any location I've been to. I would say that Hinsdale is a mixture of a lot of things. I do believe that it's an intelligent haunting. I think that there are more than just spirits there. I do feel that there are residual hauntings there as well. In my opinion, Hinsdale is just a pot with a lot of different things thrown into it. Anybody who has been there understands what I'm saying.
Before I bring up another location, because I do understand what you're saying, but that's going to lead us into folklore and different lore with the telephone game.
Yes.
So we're not going to give away too much because we have people here that want to go to Hinsdale, and I don't want to give any preconceived notions. But do you think part of what is at Hinsdale has to do with folklore, or do you think it has to do with the background of the property of why a certain entity is there?
I think it has to do with historical facts. Anybody who goes to Hinsdale should absolutely do your research on the location. There are things that happened historically. It is on Salamanca land, Indians, war, all of that happened there. So I think the bloodshed that happened and the people that were murdered there, those are where I think the residual happens. Cause you'll hear things. That's about as much as I'll say. But just the history of all of it, I think, has tainted that land. And over time, there's hundreds of people that visit. And every time you visit a location, you leave a little bit of yourself there, a little piece of energy, whatever you may believe. But there's a lot of people that visit, not always people with the best intentions. We all know that there's the mirror in the closet that hundreds of people have scryed into. Yep. What their intention is when they do that, we don't know. We don't know what gates they're opening. So I don't know. I think it's historical, but I think people bring things in that maybe they're not equipped to deal with.
So I would put right up there with Hinsdale, seeing some of the comments that are coming through is, I have not been to the Sally house. Ian brought that up, but I have been to the Axe Murder house, and I have been to the Monroe house, and they do all have something in common. And I think that's leading over to the folklore side of, yes, there are certain entities at each of them, but I also think, I forgot the word we were talking about earlier. Ecuador?
No, not Ecuador. That's a place. Ecuador.
Now, I know Ecuador is a place, but there's also a Endor or something Star Wars show. So too many.
No, Ecuador. I mean, I forgot the word. I had to text Garrett, and he saved the day because I could not Google it for the life of me. But Ecuador, yes.
So,
thank you, Garrett, if you're listening, for saving me.
the concept of something being created out of nothing. That the Monroe house, the Axe Murder house, and the Hinsdale house. I also think on top of what is already at those locations, that people have left imprints there based on media of these places. So you see all these shows that go to these places. Oh my God, there's a demon. Oh my God, I'm getting attacked. I'm getting possessed. All this type of stuff. So what do people go in expecting? That you are going to get possessed, scratched, that, you've got to do this Ouija board stuff and all that. And you're starting to now create something that there is no defense against. So you brought up the
Ecuador?
No, drawn a blank. The exorcism, modern day exorcism.
Yeah.
So modern day exorcisms are based on a demonic entity. What do you do with a malicious entity that is created out of nothing? That did not come from a cut of the devil, did not come from the cut of God or any of that. Are we putting people, not we, but are we putting people in danger by letting this stuff grow and gather energy based on these beliefs and what people are doing going into these locations?
Absolutely. I think that the sad part of the paranormal world, and us both being investigators, we have witnessed this, is people believe everything that they see on TV, and they think that because they watch a certain show with a few guys that happen to think everything's demonic, you guys can guess from there. They assume by watching that show that they know how to investigate, and you don't. You don't know what you're doing until you get into that situation. You don't know. One simple phrase could cause you to have an attachment. One simple, like, oh, you're so sweet, I would take you home. Boom, you're screwed. That you just opened the door for an invitation to go home with you. People who play with Ouija boards who think that they're just toys and they don't realize what they're doing. The scrying, if you don't know what you're doing there, you're opening another gateway. And with Monroe, again, another location that I think was fantastic. We investigated there together. There was 4 Ouija boards. Every single one of them still had the planchette still on the board. There were no evidence of them closing the boards beforehand. Our pendulums were going crazy anytime a board, it was by a board. So I think I hate to use the word amateurs, but I think these people who are thrill seekers, they go out and they just want a good scare, or people who really believe that maybe, they've YouTube something and they thought they figured it out. And then they go and they play with these things and they're opening doors and it could cause a lot of issues for somebody who's not spiritually strong.
Now let's use those facts, because I know you can go on the next 30 minutes talking about it.
Yes. So before we jump into that, let's take a quick break. Just give everyone a quick second to maybe go grab a drink, and then we'll be right back.
All right.
Looking for a holistic solution? Look no further than LimestreetWellness.com. Lime Street Wellness is a full-service Reiki therapy center offering in-person and distant Reiki sessions. Additionally, Lime Street Wellness is committed to helping clients co-create healthier outcomes with hypnosis, QHHT, and intuitive advice. Lime Street Wellness is committed to helping all that are seeking to co-create better health, peace of mind, and greater freedom. Reiki Master Kevin Mackey uses energy medicine, hypnosis, mindfulness, and intuitive guidance to assist in uncovering, understanding, and removing any blocks or energy cords or mental mindsets that may be intruding and causing needless suffering. Visit Lime Street Wellness today at limestreetwellness.com. That's limestreetwellness.com.
Cool. Okay, for anybody who just tuned in, welcome to Ben.
Beyond the Paranormal.
Beyond the Afterlife.
Beyond the Afterlife. Don't put me on the spot, Ashley. You can't do that to me.
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry to cut you off, but what was that thought you were thinking?
So with the folklore and the beliefs and stuff like that. So let's go back to some history with protection against paranormal. And this is where people are going to laugh. And I do see a question from Ian that I will address after we kind of jump into this a little bit. But the most accurate show on television right now about ghost hunting, technically even a ghost hunting show, I should say. Ashley, what show am I talking about?
You know, it's funny, and I hate to say this out loud, but Supernatural.
Yes.
Watching Supernatural, and I have to admit, I'm brand new to it. I'm only on season 3. You know, watching some of the things that they do and how they protect themselves and how they're going through it and handling these spirits, I sit back and I laugh and I'm like, this show did their research. I mean, down to the gopher dust that they use in one of the episodes and the salt and, you know, the smell of sulfur. Like, they legitimately did their research on folklore for the show. So I'm highly impressed.
With Supernatural, what is the most common thing that I carry with myself, if you remember, for protection? I have 4 of them.
Oh, God.
Come on, Ashley. You put me on the spot. This is payback.
Oh.
So, Ian or anyone in the comments, if you know what I carry with me.
Carry with you?
Yeah, I carry them with me all the time.
Are they pendants?
No.
Medallions?
No. What do they use when, okay, outside of rock salt?
Am I fired?
Outside of rock salt, what do they use? What do they swing at a spirit that is chasing after them?
Oh, silver. Right?
Iron.
Oh,
my railroad spikes.
Your iron spikes. Yes.
So,
I thought you meant physically on your person.
No, I do. And when we're on investigation, I carry a spike in my pocket. I'm not carrying it with me right now.
Oh, silver's werewolves, isn't it?
Silver is werewolves. Yeah. But that is still a folklore and history. So with iron, the reason, you pass, I have a bunch of people saying iron in the comments. Come on, Ashley.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I'm not really feeling that great. I'm going to say brain fog. Okay.
Okay. All right. So with graveyards, cemeteries, and I know they're 2 different things. If you go past them, most of them have a iron fence that is surrounding them. And then you see these pictures of iron cages over graves and people are like, oh my God, it's zombies. No. That is what people believed would keep spirits contained, is crossing irons. It's not zombies, Ashley.
Iron cages were actually to keep out
grave robbers. Sorry.
There you go.
They were to keep out grave robbers, but the concept of iron is still a thing. So when we were at Monroe House and I wasn't feeling comfortable, what did I do? I put iron spikes around doorways.
Yes, and then you made me sit in the middle and it growled.
Yes, and we have evidence of that as well. But it worked.
It did.
We were able to push back and not have it come across to us. So when you have these make-believe, in lack of a better terms, these make-believe entities that were nothing before, what can people do? Like, if people want to get educated in this field, the history is the easy thing to find if they truly want to dive into it. But for modern times, what can we recommend to people of this is what you do to protect yourself, especially from these entities that you can't use religion, you can't use holy water?
So, I think it's all personal preference. First, I do that question about the egregore, I do want to get back to that. I think protection, it's a personal choice. For me, going into locations, especially things like Hinsdale and Monroe, I like to go off by myself for a second, give myself a minute, and I say a prayer, because to me, God's my number one, and if he's gonna be the protector. So I say a little prayer to God. I talk to the angels, and I'm like, listen, Michael, Gabriel, like, you got me. We good. Like, don't let nothing happen. Spirit guides. And then I also have crystals. And I know a lot of people think that they're silly and they don't work. But I mean, if you guys could see my desk, they're just full of crystals. I do believe in the power of natural substances, as weird as that sounds.
You might want to clarify that for some of the people on here.
Like, natural.
Okay.
I think that, people say, oh, crystals is witchy and things like that. But, for the religion, God made all of these natural elements. Why not use them the way that they're used in Native American medicine, and they're used in witchcraft, and they're used in all these different things? And I don't know. That's my personal preference, is a good prayer, talk to the angels, spirit guides, crystals.
So Bill made a good point that it's whatever makes you feel safe. And
you
to
need
me,
to do your research and pick what best fits you.
And what you believe works. Yeah. And for me, like the railroad spikes, that doesn't work for everyone. That's not just a magic catch-all of like, hey, here's a spike, you're protected. To me, I truly believe that they work and they protect me. So
until your teammate locks you in a room and it starts growling at you.
The room was not locked. Let's clarify.
You had them in all the doorways. I was in the middle and Ian was on the other side, and we were both.
Ian was on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, that little door, because it was growling at him and it was growling at me. Ian?
I didn't cause that. That thing just wasn't happy. So with iron spikes, with crystals, with all this stuff, where did now come into folklore? You brought up werewolves.
Yeah.
So you've got werewolves, and excuse me, I have to take a sip of water in a second. With silver, you've got, I don't know what kills Bigfoot, if people even try and kill Bigfoot, if there's anything with that. But Bloody Mary, how do you protect yourself against Bloody Mary, if that's a thing? When you look at what other tales are the Krampus out there? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, if you behave, you can avoid Krampus. So with these folklores and with these different protections, what would you wrap in, like crystals, for example? Are crystals going to protect you from Krampus?
Well, here's the thing, and this is going to sound very jerkish of me, but if you're out looking for a kukui, or you're looking for a chupacabra, or you're looking for a vampire, or werewolves or whatever, it's the same thing as, going out looking for crime. Yeah. Okay. Perfect example. It's way off track, but maybe perfect example. If you go to commit a crime, say you have a gun on you because that's how you feel protected. At the end of the day, you have to know that your actions are going to have consequences. Whether you rob a bank or you rob a grocery store, whatever you're doing, it's a possibility that 1, you could get shot, 2, you could get arrested, or 3, you could get away. You need to look at the paranormal as the same way. Every day that you go out searching for something that is technically considered unknown, you have to understand that you're putting yourself at risk. You may walk away perfectly fine. You may walk away with an attachment. You may walk away with nightmares and, all the scary things that go bump in the night. But that is a risk that you take being a paranormal investigator. And that's just how you have to look at it.
So where did the looking for the paranormal, so investigating, I know you have a couple pages of research in front of you. So do you have any historical data on when the first paranormal team or paranormal investigation, like time frame of when this became I don't want to say common, because I feel like the most mainstream it's become is when Ghost Hunters came out in early 2000s or late 90s, whenever that was. So prior to that, how did people get this data? Like, whether people believe them or not, look at the Warrens. Look at the information they put out there. Even before the Warrens, Holzer, is that how you say his name? From the Holzer files?
Yes.
So his data, Like, you got to look at all that stuff is, a lot of people shunned on that type of stuff. So how did that become mainstream from who's making comments?
I'm not laughing at the comments. I'm laughing about the thoughts in my head.
Well, then let's share those thoughts of whether people believe, they were truly psychics, investigator, demonologist. When did this start becoming a more in front of your face type thing compared to, like, for example, the Catholic Church with exorcisms is a big no-no. Like, you don't talk about that. Paranormal, the world used to be like Fight Club. You don't talk about Fight Club. So how did that break the mold, or when do you think that mold got broken?
I think, the Warrens, I do think, played a big part in it. I think movies and all of that mainstream things, they got the interest peaked, and that's what got people wondering. And there's anytime there's crime, Amityville horror, there is money to be made. When you have a family slaughtered by a brother, a son, whatever, there is money to be made. I am probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I think Amityville is an absolute scam. Honestly,
the owners came out and said they fabricated. I don't think the murders were a scam, but I do think the story behind why the murders happened, the owners actually did come out and say they fabricated it for the book.
So what people don't realize, and this is now going to go back into crime, but so the DeFeo family was murdered. It was the DeFeo son who murdered the family. What they don't know is that the DeFeo family did have ties to the mob, and the son had stolen thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars from his father before he murdered them. The Lutz family that moved into the house and caused the whole Amityville frenzy, the dad, or the husband that we know from the movies, was very into a cult. He was obsessed with Satanism. He was obsessed with the paranormal. And even his son and nephews will come out and say that he was just over the top. He would pay for seances and all these things. So he moved into that house with the thought of, this is everything I wanted, because, 7 people were just murdered here. And actually, the lawyer of the DeFeo family did come out and say that him and Mr. Lutz kind of talked over wine and made up the whole thing for money. So that's just a little tidbit on the Amityville.
So with Amityville, the most recent movie, just a fun fact for everyone on here, is called Amityville Karen. It is about the stereotypical Karen moving into the Amityville house.
I thought you were trying to take a hit that I'm like the paranormal Karen.
No, that's what the movie is about. So this is like the 37th Amityville movie since the story has come out. So let's backtrack though to the lesser known cases. Okay. So, you've got the house. I'm going to refer to the movie because I don't know the exact name of the case, but a haunting in Connecticut. There has not. What's that?
Are you talking about the Conjuring house?
No, not the Conjuring house, because that one still, if you listen to the family interviews from back then to the family interviews now, granted, I do think something was there, but it's also become a Hollywood hit. Yeah. So I'm talking about, it was a former funeral home in Connecticut, and I'm going to wrap that into a place we've investigated before. So it was a former funeral home in Connecticut that the mortician in the basement would do a bunch of experiments on these deceased bodies. And back to your fact about funerals, it's closure for the family and also keeping the spirit with that relative that passed away. So what happens when you start messing with that body and beyond normal circumstances? You make something angry. You make something that, now has something to take care of, so can't really pass over. So it caused a lot of hate to build into that house to the concept of energy. So, you got family members finding out about this. You've got bodies that are being messed with. So something forms out of nothing in this house. And to this day, if you dig deep enough, and this is a really hard thing to dig on, there is still stuff happening at that house, but they don't talk about it because they don't want the teams there. They don't want, to become another big Hollywood movie or anything, but there is still activity to this day happening at the house.
Well, it's getting close to our time that we have to end. But, on that note, it's the same thing as, right now, everybody's into positive affirmations. They're like, if you get up in the morning, you say, I am beautiful, I am strong, I am this, I am that, and you're telling yourself all these great things, you're going to start to feel better about yourself. I do think that it has the same effect. If you tell yourself, oh, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm this, I'm that, you're going to start to believe that. And it's the same thing in the paranormal world. If you look into a mirror every day and picture seeing an old woman, eventually your mind is going to have you see this old woman. And I think, like I said in the beginning, the brain is a powerful tool. Manifestation is an absolute real thing, and it's very powerful, good or bad. And I think a lot of folklore, like someone said earlier, it is a game of telephone, but it all had to originate from somewhere. But what is it? Did somebody see, like the chupacabra? Did somebody see a hairless dog that maybe had mange and it was just a big dog? And they're like, oh my God, I saw this creature. And then over time, it turns into chupacabra.
But we have, as you said, we have about 10 minutes left, so I'm not going to dive into it too much because I would still like to bring in a few more minutes of folklore. Somebody brought up the Salem witch trials. Outside of folklore, that could be a whole show in itself. And that's something that we definitely, I feel like, could discuss down the road with, tragic events that could cause those chain reaction hauntings, just like you were talking about the Hinsdale house. So with folklore and the world of paranormal, this is what a lot of people don't understand is, a lot of people as investigators, and don't get me wrong, I've done it. We laugh at the Bigfoot hunters. We laugh at the UFO hunters, stuff like that. And until you really kind of look into their facts, their knowledge, they're looking at us and laughing. Folklore and paranormal investigating and believing in aliens, all this stuff goes. Oh, you owe me. With that, it's just that we need to be supportive of one another in these things, because at the end of the day, what all of this stuff says, whether it came from seeing a dog with mange or somebody truly saw something, is there is something else out there. Is it a spirit? We don't know. Is it a Bigfoot? We don't know. I mean, scientists have only explored 2% of the world's oceans, only about, I want to say like 17% of the world's forest. Is there really just us on Earth, outside of Earth? And it's just, we need to make sure that the facts that we're bringing to the table, not just through the show, but on our investigations, that we're showing the facts that people are always going to find something to argue with, but we have done our best to say, this is not normal. This does not happen because it's windy outside, because a handprint appeared on the wall taller than me, stuff like that. We want to make sure that we're bringing the education and this type of stuff to all the people watching us, all the people that follow us on our investigations. And, the more we go down the track of what Hollywood has done or what television has done, the less people are going to be like, yeah, they're just like everyone else. They're in it for the wrong reason. So exploring stuff, folklore, paranormal, UFO, Bigfoot, all that fun stuff is just the tip of the iceberg for everything that we have to really deep dive into. Right.
Well, and that's why I love what we do on this team. I do think that anybody who believes that Earth is it and human is it and things like that, I think they're very ignorant or maybe scared. It could be a little bit of both. But I think it's
the same people that think the Earth is flat.
Yeah, it's a level of ignorance that I don't know. There's just no way to think that we're it, like what makes us so special. But what I was going to say is one of the things that I do love about this team is that, when we go out and we investigate, especially with these public events, with people who come out, a lot of the people that come out have not really investigated a lot. They might have done 1, maybe 2 public investigations, but there's a lot of questions and they're not really sure how to use the equipment. And, I hate when people watch the stuff on TV, because I think it's just a false reality. That's not how it works. Demons did not happen like that. I've been in this field for a long time and I've never come across a demon. I know not everybody can say that, but it's just not everyday life. But we teach them the right way to do it. We teach them the safe way to do it. And if somebody does have an interest in a Ouija board or a black mirror or scrying, like we have people who have experience in these different, we'll say, abilities, I guess. to try and help these people learn the proper, safe ways to do it. And not everybody does that. A lot of people are just out for money and for themselves and to make a name for themselves. And unfortunately, it's a sucky situation.
And that's where, you know, I'm bringing up Bloody Mary again, because I think that's the one people know most. You know, we grew up as kids like, oh my God, Bloody Mary, we're terrified. Beetlejuice broke that fear for me, because you say Beetlejuice 3 times and he appears. I'd much rather see him than this bloody whatever. No spoilers. Have you gotten to the Bloody Mary episode of Supernatural?
Yeah, I think that was season 1.
Okay.
They took care of that. I'm not worried about her no more.
They already took care of that.
They took care of it. She's done.
So, but that's to your point of investigations. You know, people want to learn about stuff like that. You know, we want to teach more than just paranormal. If somebody wants to go into the bathroom at one of these abandoned locations to say Bloody Mary 3 times, I will support it 100%, but I will not support the after effects of it, because
I would probably go in there and be like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because
I would not. I would sit back.
The world are going to save you, but I will try my best.
I will sit back and watch what happens, because with, you know, the last couple minutes, let's say a part of folklore is what we want to believe. Mm-hmm. So if we believe that Bloody Mary is a thing and we go to do Bloody Mary, mm-hmm. we're going to see something. It might not be the same picture everyone else sees, but it's going to be a part of what our mind creates. But like I said earlier, the scientific fact, our mind cannot create a face out of nothing. Yeah. So if you see a bloody face in the mirror, you have seen it somewhere, which to me is a much scarier thought than any of these folklore stories that we have come across.
Yep. And on that note, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching the very first episode. So I think we're going to be every other Monday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. So you guys can catch us here. Definitely stay on. There's a great show on after next called Be the Change with Christina Bloom. So that's a great show. Stay tuned and watch that. And Ben and I will see you in 2 weeks, guys.
Thanks for jumping on, everyone.
Have a good night.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.